안녕하십니까. 대한민국 수호 예비역 장성단이 운영하는 유튜브 채널 장군의 소리입니다. 저는 대수장의 전략위원으로 활동하는 김태우 박사입니다. 오늘 대담 시간에는 정말로 특별한 손님을 모셨습니다. 미스터 고든 창을 모셨습니다. 이분은 코넬 대학과 코넬 법학대학원에서 공부를 하셨고 지금은 미국에서 유명한 오피니언 리더이기도 하고 평론가, 코멘테이터이기도 하고 로이어이기도 하고 그리고 미국 정부에 어드바이스를 주고 있는 전문가이시기도 합니다. 오늘 고든창 박사님을 모시고 특별 대담을 이어가도록 하겠습니다. Mr. 고든창, thank you very much for your coming.
Oh, it's an honor for me to be here. So thank you, General.
Welcome to KOGAD. Welcome to South Korea. Well, KOGAD, let me introduce briefly first. This is a Korean retired generals and admirals defending the nation. This is a group of some 850 retired generals of South Korean armed forces. We are fighting actually against the Moon Jae-in government's destruction of a nation, destruction of security. So this time we will expect a great deal of lessons what you are saying this time. Okay, appreciating once again what you are saying and doing in Washington that have becoming a great deal of support and encouragement to many patriotic South Koreans who are fighting against this regime. Let me begin with the first question about the rallies in downtown Seoul. Probably you have heard that every Saturday tens of thousands of people gather to condemn this government and to request the early resignation of President Moon Jae-in. So my first question is, how do you think about this assembly? How do you think about these gatherings? And how do you think of those people who take the street every Saturday with their national flags of both nations, South Korea and United States, in their hands?
Well, these are Korean patriots, and they fly two flags, as you mentioned. They fly the Korean flag because they're Korean patriots. They believe in liberty and democracy in South Korea. They believe in all of those good things. And that's why they show their dedication by going downtown to fly the flag. And also they fly my flag, the American flag, because they believe in the alliance between South Korea and the United States. That alliance has been in place since 1953.
Right.
It is the alliance, as they say, that's forged in blood, and it's the alliance that has kept the peace. You know, Moon Jae-in talks about, we're going to have peace. Well, you've had peace, and you've had peace because of the alliance. And I think it's very telling that the government does not publicize the flag rallies. I mean, these rallies go on, and the world would not know about it because Korean broadcasting system and all the rest, they don't cover it.
That's right.
And that shows you that Moon Jae-in is not a Korean patriot.
That's right. That's why the YouTube channels like this is very important in South Korea. So anyway, you expressed your support of those South Koreans who take the street every Saturday. Then is that support related to your visit this time? Can you let us know a little bit about your activities during your stay this time?
Yeah, just one thing about the Korean patriots. They do inspire my wife and me.
Okay.
And this is important. We have just so much admiration for you and for the people who take to the streets on Saturdays. You know, we came here to participate in Korean CPAC, Conservative Political Action Conference. And this is to bring conservatives together, to bring opposition together, because this is such a consequential time in Korea. Right now, we have the election coming up, April 15th, 2020. All 300 seats in the National Assembly will be up for grabs. And the reason why I think it's so important is because if Moon Jae-in gets more than 2/3 of the seats in the National Assembly, he will be able to start the process to amend the Constitution.
Right.
And I'm concerned that what he'll do is he'll amend the Constitution of South Korea to abolish it, that he will want to unify with North Korea. And that is very dangerous for liberty and freedom on the Korean Peninsula.
That's right. That's right. Nevertheless, that will not happen. Taking the 2/3 of National Assembly seats, that won't happen, and we will block them from happening.
Korean conservatives right now are not unified.
You are right. You are right.
And although Moon Jae-in is very unpopular, and he's very unpopular because he's done some very bad things, but nonetheless, he's counting the votes, and he is going to be the one who's unified, even though his popularity is very low. So it's important that conservatives hold at least 1/3 of the seats in the National Assembly. So this is critical for it, because I know that if Moon Jae-in, if he gets more than 2/3, he is going to try to unify with North Korea. He's told us that's what he wants to do. He is not a Korean patriot. This is so important. Just one minor detail, which really was so that grabbed my attention, and that is on August 15th of this year. That's the 71st anniversary of the founding of the Republic of Korea. Moon Jae-in gave an address, and he didn't mention South Korea. He talked about the provisional government, a government which never existed.
Right.
And the question is, why would he do that? Why would he not talk about the government that he was elected to serve, that he took an oath of office to defend? Well, it's because he looked at the provisional government because it included all Korea. He views South Korea as an aberration or as an anomaly, and he abhors it. So we've got to make sure that conservatives hold at least 1/3 of those seats.
Okay. Now I think I can better understand why you mentioned sometime President Moon Jae-in is the agent of North Korea. Probably, I remember you said that while interviewing with CNN, actually that remark ignited a great deal of hot debate in South Korea, and many people began to ask the hidden color, hidden ideological identity of Moon Jae-in government. So now you are explaining very kindly. If you have something more to elaborate, why you believe that way, please do so now.
Yeah. Only one person in the world knows what's inside Moon Jae-in's head. That's him. But if he were an agent of North Korea, he'd be doing exactly what he's doing now. So, for instance, when he went to Pyongyang in September, there were so many flags being flown. There were the flags of North Korea, and there was the unification flag, the blue outline of the Korean Peninsula on a white field, but there were no South Korean flags. This was a breach of protocol, and the language that Moon used also showed that he did not believe in South Korea. So to me, that was an important indication that he was not defending his own South Korean state. And he's been doing a number of things to help Kim Jong-un, the North Korean ruler. So these are things that he would do if he were a traitor. So to me, it is so important that the people of South Korea defend their homes, defend their liberty. And your organization is a spearhead of this. So we are very honored to be here to talk to you.
Thank you again for saying that. Really, increasing number of South Koreans are believing in the way is like you do. They are believing that Moon Jae-in government is pursuing a bad unification, so-called one nation, two system Korean federation. But we South Korean pundits, experts, believe that type of unification is like a stepping stones leading to the communization of the whole peninsula. But unfortunately, still not a few youngsters think unification very romantically without knowing the dangers built in that bad unification. So you are quite sure that Moon Jae-in is pursuing that type of unification.
Yes. Well, Moon Jae-in, he's been talking about unification of the two Koreas. And you know, every Korean leader, North and South, since the division of the peninsula in 1945, have advocated, at least theoretically, unification.
Right.
Moon Jae-in, though, is the first Korean leader to accept the unification provisions of the other side. This one country, two governments, this comes from Kim Il-sung.
Right.
This is the first one to talk about this.
Right.
And what my concern is that if you do have this, then Kim Jong-un, as one of the two leaders of Korea, what he's going to do is he's going to use his position inside the Korean state to intimidate, to coerce, to harass South Korea. So I think that this is a very bad idea. And one can talk about unification, and that would be the ultimate goal, but that's only unification with the Republic of Korea, a free democracy. Moon Jae-in doesn't believe in free democracy. Matter of fact, his party in last spring, in spring of 2018, tried to remove the concept of freedom from the South Korean constitution.
Right, you know
that's that's an indication of what Moon really believes. He believes in trying to make the constitution of South Korea compatible with that of North Korea. And his economic policies are also trying to do the same thing. And that shows that he wants unification on North Korea's terms.
That's right, exactly. What you are saying is what is happening right now, but still the constitution is there, and any unification other than a one under liberal democracy is against the constitution. So this is the reason why we have to safeguard the constitution. You know. So anyway, let's move on to the issue of GSOMIA a little bit. Many South Korean pundits, of course, as well as the KOGA, the generals, are very much concerned about Moon Jae-in government's destruction of nation, destruction of security. Particularly, the Moon Jae-in government decided to expire GSOMIA, the South Korea-Japan military intelligence sharing agreement. After that, so many things happened. So many, hot debate took place in Seoul. And we believe the same hot debate also took place in the Washington, D.C. So I'd like to know, was that really serious in Washington too? What was the response of American policymakers to that decision?
American policymakers were very concerned about Moon Jae-in terminating the military information sharing agreement with Japan. And this is, I think, one event that triggered a lot of angst. And the reason is, policymakers have not paid that much attention to Moon Jae-in, but this is the one event that caught them and they said, oh my gosh, what's going on here? So I think that it's going to be a watershed moment. We will look back on that termination of the agreement where it really caught Washington's attention for the first time. Moon, for a very long time, has been doing all sorts of things to undermine the alliance, undermine relations with Japan. But it wasn't until the termination of the military sharing agreement, GSOMIA, that caught people's attention.
Right. Actually, that controversy still goes on here in South Korea too. Well, originally, the South Korean experts, including myself, advised very strongly that the GSOMIA should be kept intact for three reasons. The first reason was GSOMIA is something South Korea needs more badly than Japan does.
Absolutely.
And the Japan's superior ISR capability is our property for South Korean security, which should be inevitably the most immediate would be target of North Korean nuclear weapons. The second reason, the GSOMIA is closely related to our alliance with the United States. So the termination of GSOMIA collides head-on against the U.S. Indo-Pacific strategy. So if we do that, then it will hurt our alliance. A third reason, we are sharing the liberal democracy with Japan in this region, while China is increasingly assertive and expansionist power, bullying the neighboring countries. then we need GSOMIA and we need alliance not only for this time but for the future also. So this is the reason why we opposed that decision. But the Moon Jae-in government never paid any attention to this kind of advice. Rather, they stirred anti-Japanese sentiment over here. So I'd like to give another related question, on this. Right after the Department of State expressed the disappointment and concerns over Moon Jae-in's decision, GSOMIA decision, South Korean Deputy Minister of Foreign Affairs called in the U.S. ambassador and protested. At that time, I expected that this will prompt the anger in Washington. So did it do so really? The anger was prompted in Washington?
From what I heard, certainly yes. And as I mentioned before, this is the one event that I think has triggered concern in Washington, caught the attention of American policymakers and also the American public, because there were a number of newspaper articles that talked about this, because Americans really were not, of course, paying attention to this whole issue. But it is critical because for the reasons that you say, South Korea is on the front line.
Right.
There's a demilitarized zone. It's 160 miles long. And on the other side of that is a hostile militant state. Japan is far away across the sea. And so South Korea, whatever it feels about Japan, and my father fled the Japanese in World War II, so I understand what people say about Japan in South Korea, what they say about Japan. But the important point is, this is primarily for South Korea's benefit. This is essential for the defense of South Korea. And today, there was this launch of a submarine-launched ballistic missile by North Korea. South Korea says, well, there's one missile. Japan said 2 missiles. Well, this is important to know. And Japan, as you say, does have some superior capabilities that would benefit South Korea's defense.
Sure, absolutely, yes. But the important thing is they never listen to the advices like that. Anyway, I think the South Korean government committed a kind of diplomatic discourtesy by doing that. That was really unprecedented, the behavior. And also, I think this government doesn't understand how a asymmetric alliance between strong and small country, big and small country, can function. So that's why it worried us. Anyway, let's move on a little bit to another issue, the inter-Korean military agreement. Have you heard that the KOGA generals sued the former and current defense ministers? You heard that?
Yes, I did. Yeah, the September 2018 agreement benefits the attacker, North Korea, much more than the defender, South Korea, because it takes away many of the capabilities that South Korea had to detect an attack. By, for instance, widening the no-fly zone, by taking artillery off of the islands in the West Sea. By doing all of these things, it aids North Korea's ability to sneak attack South Korea. And this is not a theoretical concern. We've seen this, of course, June 1950, for instance. So this is an agreement that one looks at this and say, why would Moon Jae-in ever sign an agreement like this? And I think it's because he does not believe in defending South Korea. What he wants to do is to give North Korea the ability to intimidate the South. And that suggests that he's a traitor.
Okay. You already summarized why and how we, KOGA generals, sued the ministers. We believe, we think the same way, like what you do, The generals believe that, and I do believe that that agreement bans a certain size of military drills. By doing that, it will weaken our readiness against any surprise attack from North. And also it obscures the NLL, Northern Limit Line in the Yellow Sea, which has been safeguarded by the blood of South Korean soldiers, So that agreement obscures that the line. It's just de facto borderline, but obscured that. And like what you said, as you said, no-fly zone is really serious, really serious. That agreement completely disregard difference between the offenders and defenders. South Korean forces has been always defenders, should be alert 24 hours, against any possible southbound provocations. But the North Korean forces, they are offenders. They don't have to do that. They never operated any ISR aircraft. So then, this is really, as you said, benefiting North Korea. That is the reason why we sued the two ministers, former and current ministers.
And what's important is that this occurred in the context of Moon Jae-in unilaterally taking apart the tank traps,
Right.
by taking down observation posts,
Right.
by barbed wire fencing,
Right.
by planning to
Right.
reduce the size of the South Korean
Right.
military,
Yeah.
by reducing the period of conscription from 21 months to 18 months.
Right.
In a country of a declining demography, that makes no sense whatsoever unless you don't want South Korea to defend itself.
That's right. That's exactly what is happening. That is the background why we sued the two ministers. Of course, we don't believe this government will punish this court at this moment. Court punish them, but nevertheless, it's really symbolic. And by doing that, we will do our best to educate our people.
Absolutely.
So you are supporting the action taken
Yes, of
by
course.
KOGAD, okay.
I mean, South Korea has to defend itself. It has to deter North Korea. We know what happens when South Korea's deterrence fails.
Okay, thank you very much for that. Let's talk a little bit about the nuclear things. Many South Koreans, probably many opinion leaders like you in the States, would believe that the North Korea will fight to the last moment to get kind of a bad small deal. The terminology bad small deal here means a fake denuclearization, by which we mean U.S. Just to accept partial denuclearization of North Korea or a nuclear freeze and normalize relations with Pyongyang. By doing that, U.S. may allow North Korea a status of a nuclear weapon state. So this is what we are afraid of actually here. And John Bolton, just a couple of days ago said that North Korea will not voluntarily accept complete denuclearization. So we think the same way here in South Korea. So my question is, what is your perspective of the future of North Korean nuclear issue, and is there any possibility that the U.S. will accept the bad small deal?
Yeah, I don't think President Trump will do that, but I don't know. John Bolton was very clear in the comments that he gave, and he's obviously concerned. So all of us, Americans and South Koreans, have to be concerned. But I don't think President Trump is actually going to accept a bad deal. But in any event, you're absolutely right. Kim Jong-un does not want to give up his most destructive weapons, and talking about this doesn't help. I believe that what the United States should be doing is sanctioning North Korea and also vigorously enforcing sanctions. The United States has not been vigorously enforcing sanctions since the middle of May of 2018. That was when the U.S. did not sanction almost 36 Russian, Chinese, and other front companies that Kim Jong-un was using. And because Kim Jong-un changes his front companies all the time, if you don't sanction the new ones, you're allowing him to operate without sanctions.
Right.
So this is important to go after not only the old front companies, but the new ones as well. And I hope the Trump administration will go back to chasing down all the money that Kim Jong-un gets from the international community. Because if there's no money, there's no nuclear weapons program, there's no ballistic missile program, there's no gift politics. Kim Jong-un gives a lot of gifts to senior regime elements. If you don't have money, you can't do that. And if there's no gift politics, there's no regime.
That's right, that's right. Anyway, this is really a big problem to all Koreans. But these days, President Trump has very frequently he made remarks downplaying the alliance and emphasizing and boasting his close personal relationship with Kim Jong-un. Well, Mr. Chang, I remember sometime you said the two leaders of the North and South Korean leaders are simply too cozy. So I'd like to ask the same question. Isn't the relations between Kim Jong-un and President Trump too cozy?
Well, many Americans, most Americans don't like President Trump's cozy relations with Kim Jong-un. I think, though, it's not quite as bad as it appears. And the reason is Trump has actually told us what he's going to do. He said at the Ottawa G7, which preceded the historic Singapore summit by a few days last June, Trump said he was giving Kim a one-time shot to do the right thing. Now, Trump is trying to entice the North Koreans into good behavior. Nobody in history has ever enticed the North Koreans into good behavior over the long term. Not the Russians, not the Chinese. We Americans are not going to be the first to do this. So I think that the president's policies are misguided. But there's one important, I think, hope here, and that is, you go back to what President Trump was doing with Xi Jinping, the Chinese ruler. In 2017, which was really Trump's first year in office, the U.S. policy towards China was very friendly. Trump was saying very nice things about Xi Jinping and giving China a lot of free passes. Xi Jinping, however, did not take advantage of the opportunity. And then Trump started to come down and hammer the Chinese with some really tough policies. I think President Trump's going to do the same thing with Kim Jong-un. When it becomes clear to Trump that Kim is not taking advantage of President Trump's gestures. Now, I can't say that that's what Trump's going to do. I don't give him advice. He doesn't talk to me about these things. And I don't like his policies right now. But I think that's what's going to happen. But we need to put pressure on President Trump to make sure he doesn't do the wrong things, which is what you talked about, a small deal, a recognition of North Korea as a nuclear weapon state. We can't allow that type of stuff to occur. So we need to keep up the pressure, not only in the United States, but also in South Korea as well.
Okay, it makes me feel much better. You know, what you are saying is making me much feel better. Anyway, did you hear that many South Koreans are talking about some additional measures, necessary measures to achieve a nuclear parity on the Korean Peninsula? Because we believe North Korea will not voluntarily discard their own nuclear weapons. So now people are demanding such measures as redeployment of U.S. tactical nuclear weapons, or nuclear sharing agreement, or permanent deployment of nuclear-mounted SSBNs in these areas. So what do you think of this demand?
You know, what the United States military doctrine right now is to keep the nukes away from enemies. And so U.S. doctrine would be to keep the weapons on ballistic missile submarines, keep them in Guam. And that way, the reason is that it makes it impossible for Kim to actually capture them in a battlefield scenario. What the U.S. is worried about is if North Korea were to invade South Korea, that if there were tactical nukes on the Korean Peninsula, that the North Koreans could capture them. But what this shows, all of these voices in South Korea for the deployment of nukes on Korean soil, it shows that American policy on North Korea has been failing. And that's absolutely right. Because we have seen the North Koreans test ballistic missiles, we've seen them test nuclear weapons, and there's been very little pushback from the United States. And that's not just a problem in the Trump administration, that's also a problem in Obama administration and the Bush administration before him. So clearly American policy has not been effective. And this is a warning to American policymakers that they need to start disarming Kim Jong-un, because if they don't, South Korea, of course, is going to take its own defense. And this is just natural. So Americans have to get to be concerned that their policy is not working.
Yeah, I understand. But when we look into the far future, and this is a hypothetical situation, suppose North Korea sticks to its own nuclear weapons, and suppose China continues to nuclear buildup, and then the current U.S. non-proliferation policies on which U.S. bans the allies' nuclear capability while giving nuclear protection under the name of nuclear umbrella or extended deterrence. This way of policy may not be really good for the long-term the U.S. strategic interest. By doing that, I think the strategic balance can be tilted in favor of China, and the South Korean allies like South Korea will be put into more difficult situations. So that's why I think there are some rooms for the Washington to rethink their current non-proliferation policies.
You know, many people in Washington are doing exactly that, rethinking U.S. non-proliferation policy because it hasn't worked. And this is something which is going to be, I think, more and more a topic of conversation in the future because Americans have to be realistic. If their non-proliferation policies don't work, then countries like Korea, Japan, Taiwan are going to take defense matters into their own hands. So American policy either has to get effective or it needs to become realistic.
Yeah, that's why personally I did some research on the possibility of cooperation among Asian allies of the U.S. Working together for a possibility of a nuclear possession within the framework of alliance. So I think in next days or in the future we will have to pay more attention to this possibility too. I think the time is not abundant, so we have to move on to the last segment of this interview. Would you, Mr. Chang, summarize once again your perception of the true color of Moon Jae-in government, and would you give us some advice to South Koreans what to do in order to get over this crisis?
Yeah, Moon, since he's become president, has undermined democracy. He's clearly tried to merge South Korea into North Korea. He's taken down defenses. It's got to be a matter of grave concern to South Koreans. And so for South Koreans, the choice is to demand that Moon resign because he has failed his most basic fundamental responsibility, which is to defend the freedom and liberty of South Korea and to defend South Korea itself from a North Korean enemy. So I think that South Koreans should be rallying in the streets to demand that Moon leave.
Thank you very much for your excellent conclusion. I will tell you, while increasing number of South Koreans accumulating a kind of inquisitiveness or an unquenchable curiosity about the true identity of this government and what this government is really pursuing, and so that is one side and one phenomena going on. But the pundits like me are paying very keen attention to inexorable consistency or unwavering directions in every policies made by this government. Downsizing of military and the signing of the notorious military agreement with North Korea, and the early separation of wartime operational control, OPCON, and dismantling of Combined Forces Command, and reduction and movement of reduction and the southbound movement of USFK bases in South Korea, and all these things contribute to success of North Korea. This is an inexorable consistency. That is what we are paying attention to. So if you agree, let's pay attention together to what this government is doing.
Yes, the people of South Korea and the people of America must work together to assure their common defense.
Okay. 시청자 여러분 감사합니다. 오늘은 미스터 고든창을 모시고 특별 대담을 나누었습니다. 이것으로서 오늘 특별 대담 시간을 마치고 저는 김태우 박사였습니다. Thank you again for your being with us, and we look forward to your continued attention to South Korean democracy.
Well, thank you. Thank you for your defense of the alliance.
I wish very rewarding stay here in Korea.
Thank you.
Thank you.